Our next speaker is Father Anthony Diaz, and he will talk about cultural diversity and political culture in India. Father Diaz is director of Xavier Institute for Social Research, which is based in Nashik. Is that correct?
Maharashtra, right.
Yes, in India. And they focus on nomadic and denotified tribes, on ecology, and on development-induced displacement, migrations. The Institute and Father Diaz are involved with the social movements. Welcome, and the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. So friends, welcome to India. Although I am not its formal ambassador. So this is a rather important but a topic which needs a lot of time, but the challenge is really to control, time and the spread of the whole topic. So I shall be doing that. So cultural diversity and India's political culture. I have divided this presentation into three parts. The first one would be the cultural diversity of India, which is absolutely huge. And then I'll outline some major threats to this cultural diversity, this diversity which actually holds India together, like the biodiversity you have in forest, which gives it strength. So there are certain threats to this diversity. And then I will move on to India's political culture, which is again very complex. And then the third part will go more into finding solutions, exploring some of the opportunities that are available to India. The Taj, many tourists will know, their first place where they visit, a lot of history, and now, of course, it is mired in huge controversy. Monument to Love, and recently, Belgian king and queen came there. Cultural diversity of India encompasses many spheres and domains. In the world of nature, of course, we have biodiversity hotspots. Even as we speak, there are scientists who are discovering new species of flora and fauna. Population, as you know, is very large, next only to China. Complex, diverse, very high density, every ecological niche occupied and preoccupied. Society being very, very complex. It's a caste-ridden society. There are classes, creeds, many religions, tribes, ethnicity. And some of you all may not be aware of the denotified tribes. You're aware of the nomadic tribes which are found everywhere, including here, Romas. But we have in India the denotified tribes. They were notified as criminals under a British law. This British genius for us came up with a law which criminalized entire communities. Culture, not really homogeneous, many cultures, subcultures, many religions, as I said, sects, denominations, many philosophies, strands of thought, several languages and dialects. The schedule, the 12th schedule lists out certain languages, about 12, but social scientists and anthropologists have discovered in their latest study that we have 900 living languages. The Bhasha Center in Gujarat, Baroda, did this study. Culture can be defined in many ways. Practices and knowledge of a particular group, shared pattern of norms and behavior, Krishna de Rossi has this definition: religion encompasses religion, food, clothing, etc. Many, many things that go under the title of culture. Derives from the Latin, shares its etymology with the words which talks about growth and development. India has been enriched by other cultures. Now we come to the threats to India's diversity. One of the major threats is, of course, religious fundamentalism. Many religions, there is a history of coexistence as well as conflict, and this conflict is now increasing and posing a huge problem, huge challenge to India and its democratic traditions. Most religions, we say, have fundamentalists, and the extreme forms are very dangerous because they move towards violence. The second major threat is what we call cultural nationalism, which is now espoused by the rightist party in India, which is now dominant on the political stage. It's a big threat. This ideology promotes their own religion. It is known as the Hindutva ideology. It has nothing much to do really with Hinduism as such, because classical Hinduism has been very accommodating, very absorptive, but this political ideology is not. They pose a big challenge and a threat to our cultures. Our indigenous culture, especially the Adivasi culture, huge threat to them. They are forcibly reconverted to Hinduism, those of them who had embraced Islam and Christianity. Minorities in India today, Christians, Muslims, Dalits and others, live in fear. Cultural nationalism is now moving from majoritarianism to authoritarianism to terrorism, and now it is known as saffron terror. And the cow has become a symbol of India's culture. And this cow is basically worshipped by the majority community and imposed now on to other communities in India. So that's a big threat. The third threat is neoliberal paradigms of development, which is focusing, as right from the cardinal to the speakers today also we heard about how it focuses on the GDP rather than on human development. As a big challenge, therefore, to integral human development. Development projects have uprooted people, displaced them but not properly rehabilitated them. Very few policies, if at all, and there are threat to indigenous way of life. The situation of tribal people all over the world is practically the same. This power of the state is what displaces people from their land, and it is known as the eminent domain power of the state, and nobody can challenge the state when the state says that we require this particular land or forest for a public purpose which is not adequately defined, and compensation, although which is a requirement of eminent domain, is not generally paid properly. And this is what social scientists call state-sponsored impoverishment. So people are not really poor when they live in forests, but they are made poor. So impoverishment has this dimension of force that you make people poor. They were not really poor. They were leading subsistence level economies, but quite happy wherever they were, but they were pulled out. And development has not done good to the country. Yesterday, Jeffrey Sachs talked about inequality, and we have here in India, the richest 1% of Indians own 58% of the country's wealth. We move quickly to the next one, political culture. It is said in social media, perhaps in a lighter vein, but it should be taken seriously. You know, we have heard of scams of frauds, corruption, etc., scams we call them. So a question goes like this: what do the politicians eat for breakfast? And the answer goes, bread and scam. So we go to a bit of history. Mahatma Gandhi was the tallest figure of the freedom movement which inspired India's constitution. Gandhi was available to everyone. He was born a Hindu, but at the same time, he had Sermon on the Mount as his inspiration. He moved around freely with all communities. Nobody ever called him a communalist, which is a very bad term in India. He resisted, of course, conversion. Nelson Mandela was highly inspired by him. This is Gandhi. Nehru was, in a way, his successor, person who worked very closely with him. There were differences between the two of them. Here we see Mahatma Gandhi and Nehru conferring, taking India forward, discussing. Indira Gandhi changed this very good value system that Mahatma Gandhi had during the freedom struggle and he was leading. First woman prime minister took major decisions, came up with very interesting slogans, and she stopped the Silent Valley project, in one sense because she wanted to project to the world that she is environment friendly. She took a very dangerous decision, which is the emergency, and India is still recovering from the emergency days. That is Indira Gandhi and Nehru together. Emergency did a lot of harm to the country. Permanent blot on democracy is what we say. Rajiv Gandhi was her son. Okay? Rode on the sympathy wave because she was shot dead, his mother. He in turn was killed by the LTTE of Sri Lanka. This is Rajiv Gandhi. Sonia Gandhi came again. She took over charge. We have different kind of politics happening. The Mandal politics, which was to do with the implementation of the backward commission, uplift of them. Then there were temple politics. Demolition of mosques that took place, which shook India. And then all these politics playing together. This is Sonia Gandhi, Italian origin. Then came the rise of the right. So today we have what is known as the Bharatiya Janata Party, BJP, a rightist organization dominating the political landscape. And although its plank has been inclusive development, we do not really have that. What we have is a lot of fear among minorities and a particular type of development that helps only the elites. They captured power, and attacks on churches, attacks on Muslims. What are the features of this political culture? One is dynasty, as we saw, that from Nehru to Indira Gandhi, the family tree, and there are other several dynasties. There is the cult of the personality which goes against democracy because the person becomes more important, not policies and programs. Politics of appeasement. You appease Muslims, you don't really help them. Damages human development, doesn't help the community one bit. Jumla politics is the politics of false promises. Elections, during the time of elections, politicians come and promise the world to the people, but don't deliver. They don't want to deliver. Winnability rather than the character of the candidate is important. Corruption, we already mentioned that. Vote bank politics. So politicians cultivate vote banks. Horse trading, buying and selling of politicians. Nexus with industry, crony capitalism, what we call them. And the mix of politics with religion, a very toxic mix. That is what we today have in India. Part 3, the last one, is how do we promote, these are the challenges to democracy, to sustainability, and eventually to integral human development. Conditions have to be fostered. And we are saying, those of us who are working with other groups, civil society in India are saying that we need to strengthen the constitution because the constitution has a terrific vision of integral human development. And read together with the very, very inspiring preamble and Bill of Rights, directive principles of state policy and the jurisprudence developed by the courts, it truly can help India today, which is in a state of turmoil. And there's many, many responsibilities for civil society, but what we are saying is democracy and democratic institutions have to be strengthened. So there is a big role for the media which is now under stress because of the forces of communalism. The judiciary is also being tested. So far, it has held together, but it is wilting under pressure. There is a role for universities and intellectuals. And this again, there is a challenge, but universities are trying their best. Legal aid, there are NGOs which offer legal aid services, and they have helped the courts to develop a kind of human rights jurisprudence. We need to build democratic networks and alliances. Election Commission in India has a huge challenge. It's a watchdog. It controls elections in India. But of late, even the Election Commission as an institution, democratic institution, is under threat. The last one is a role for civil society, because India, unlike maybe in other countries, has a very strong civil society movement. I've been associated with the Narmada Bachao Andolan, which is Save Narmada River agitation. Albert was part of that in one sense because he was invited, he came there, and Medha Patkar, one of the tallest leaders, asked him to speak, and he has been traveling there. So very strong civil society movements. It's a big challenge for the civil society movement, because that is the only hope. But at the moment, even civil society is under threat, because the government of the day is trying to control and restrict finances. So we have this, foreign currency regulation account, which is being tightened. Many of the NGOs have lost their accounts because the government is being very technical and very, very careful and watchful. So there is a lot of stress on civil society. But the hope again is for us, civil society, which can, through public interest litigation, through various other movements, through education of the public and people's participation, can really challenge these anti-democratic forces and the forces which tend to destroy the environment and damage sustainability. Because in India today, if you really want to have integral human development, we need to strengthen democracy and sustainability. And the hope really lies in a very strong and robust civil society movement. And our famous political scientist, Kothari, Rajni Kothari, he emphasized this, that we must engage in politics, but of the non-party politics, which means non-party political formations, groups of people, people's movement. There are any number of people's movement which have taken on the state. Now, for example, the power of eminent domain, which is a very strong power with the state, state's power to acquire land, okay, with impunity, has been challenged in many places by people's movement. Very strong, grassroots people's movement. In some cases, of course, there have been urbanites who have come there, but by and large, it is the local people, indigenous people, who have come together and who have confronted the state and its anti-democratic, anti-people's policies. So our hope for today are truly, really people's movements. So with that, I close my presentation. Thank you very much.